Our text for this second week of Advent in the year 2020 comes from Matthew's Gospel in the second chapter, the first 11 verses. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose, and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people. Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly, and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him. After listening to the king, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them, and until it came to rest over the place where the child was born. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Because of all the things that had been changed or canceled or otherwise ruined, to be frank, because of the pandemic, when I heard on the news that the giant red bow had been placed around the top of the planetarium in Forest Park in St. Louis, it gave me a real boost. I was so strangely enthused by the news that I jumped into a car and went straight there to see the big red bow for myself. The planetarium has been placing the bow there every holiday season since 1966. By the way, I found some of these scenes on a video posted by the planetarium about the behind-the-scenes way that the bow is stored and put up that I thought you might enjoy seeing. I sure did. It's been a tradition since '66 when a group of Washington University School architectural students tied a bow there as a prank, and it was so well received that the planetarium staff decided to keep placing it there ever since. The big red bow on the roof is so special to me that I actually gathered a group of creative volunteers when I was a pastor of a church in Bon Terre, Missouri, and we actually copied the big red bow idea by placing a similar bow on the church's steeple for Christmas one year. Because my message this week, as I continue this series of sermons about the Christmas we didn't expect, is about the unexpected star of Bethlehem, the planetarium presented itself to me as a natural setting for this week's sermon. I phoned the planetarium and I asked for permission to film the recorded version of the message for YouTube inside the theater there, where they are still presenting a night sky show several times a day. You can go into the theater there and see the night sky projected up onto an 80-foot dome ceiling, and an astronomy expert explains to you just what you're viewing. Explain to us what you have in mind, the staff member I spoke with asked me, and we'll consider letting you come in with your camera. I love it when this happens because it gives me an opportunity to witness about my faith to a total stranger. I explained that the generative idea for my sermon would be that a star in the Christmas story should invite us to look up. I hope to include some interesting things about recent constellations. I'm also planning, I told them, to talk about the aspirations of the Apollo astronauts when they got their first look at the blue marble, they called it, when they saw Earth from space, and how that could inspire unity in humankind. Then I plan to conclude, I told them, while it's important to experience the marvel of the transcendent at the holidays, the crux of the Christian proclamation is that God has come down to earth to dwell among us. Sorry, the planetarium staff concluded, we don't allow photography in our theaters. Oh well, I thought, I'll just focus upon what's outside the beautiful and unique building. On the grounds surrounding the planetarium, there is on display a Hornet jet manufactured in St. Louis, a pair of giant dinosaur replicas, and one really unique statue, which was new to me, though it's been there since 2017. There on the grounds of the planetarium is a statue that's been there since 2017, as I mentioned, though it's new to me, of a 33-foot tall, human-like looking figure that looks like it's made of tin foil, and that's because it actually is. The statue is made of a process that includes tin foil in the process. The statue is called Look Up, and that's exactly what you want to do when you stand at the foot of it. I'd like for this Christmas message to encourage us to look up, both literally and spiritually. Let's look up as we consider the Star of Bethlehem. Look up beyond the problems which plague us these days. Look up above all which divides us. Look up and recall that God, who created the heavens and the earth, is still looking down upon us. If you have been looking up lately, by the way, you would have noticed that there's been quite a lot going on up there in the sky if you've been looking up recently. On Thanksgiving Eve, for example, there was a spectacle in the sky which could be viewed with the naked eye. I tried to snap a picture, but the sky wasn't quite clear enough from my vantage point for good photography, so I downloaded this picture to share with you in this video. Still, it could be seen that the moon has a star or something nearby it, which was glowing a bright reddish-orange color that night. What I was viewing was a full moon, with the planet Mars drawing closer to it than it has at any time this year. The two planets aren't going to be this close again to one another until the year 2035, so it was a real opportunity for a stargazer. From here on, Mars will continue to shrink and get dimmer as its distance from the Earth increases. By midwinter, even a large telescope will have difficulty in bringing out any surface features. By then, Mars will only be a tiny dot. By the way, the beautiful moon, which happens in November, it's called a beaver moon. I don't know why, but it's just a neat name. This past week, there's also been a partial eclipse of the moon by the planet Earth, which moved in between it and the sun. No, the moon didn't go completely dark, but if you were paying attention, you would have noticed that it grew about 60% darker on that night. All of this fervor about remembering to look up recently reminded me of that experience that we all had in the summer of 2017. Do you remember the solar eclipse? Do you recall that year we were instructed not to look directly at the sun because it would harm our eyes? We were instructed to get a special pair of eclipse glasses if we wanted to view the sun go dark and observe the shiny ring around the planet, which, by the way, is called a corona. Do you remember that? All of this activity going on up in the sky should really encourage us to look up and pay more attention. There is, by the way, going to be a meteor shower before the end of this year. Also, you should be looking up in the sky to see the meteors flashing around. More than one reason to look up. I'm sure it's because I'm a child of the 60s, when the space program was new and exciting, that I have always been fascinated with space and with NASA. So it was very special to me when my wife Lynn and I got to visit NASA on a road trip through Texas a couple years ago. We saw one of the space shuttles there, which were designed to return to Earth, landing just like an airplane. We also got to view one of only 2 Saturn rockets left in the world, which would have flown missions to the moon, but the project got canceled. It gave a feeling of awe and wonder to walk alongside of the giant rocket, now displayed inside of a building the length of several football fields, laying down on its side. We also toured a building on the NASA campus where we could view research and development in progress. In this building, we were laying eyes upon inventions in progress, which will be part of future space exploration. I'm going on and on about outer space because I believe the wonder of the star over the manger in Bethlehem, which is part of the Christmas story, was a celestial experience meant to draw all people to Christ if they were only looking up. There is a technical term for the perspective which looking up like that can give to us. It's called the overview effect. It happened for the first astronauts in the 60s who were totally focused upon the moon until they got into outer space and looked back at where they had come from. They dubbed the Earth the blue marble when they saw it for the first time from space. And this was because the Earth stands out in stark fashion as the only place where there is any color or light amongst all the other planets. The crew of astronauts on the Apollo 8 mission, which was the first flight to go around the moon and return to Earth, were the first people to see the life-altering view. When they came around the backside of the moon, they saw what they dubbed the Earth Rise, and they were spiritually moved to a new awareness of humanity and our place in the cosmos. One of the astronauts said that we are all really on a kind of a spaceship together, planet Earth. I found this video of the Apollo 8 crew recorded from outer space when they experienced the Earth Rise for the first time, along with some video of astronauts describing the overview effect in their own words. I thought these scenes were a real treat to view. I hope you do too.
Face the Nation, a spontaneous and unrehearsed news interview with the Apollo 8 astronauts. Colonel Frank Borman, the command pilot of the mission. Captain James Lovell, who has logged more hours in space than any other man, and Lieutenant Colonel William Anders, for whom the trip to the moon was his first voyage into space.
This transmission is coming to you approximately halfway between the moon and the Earth. Well, we're all in very good shape. Jim is busy working, preparing lunch. Bill is playing cameraman right now, and to get a close-up of Jim Lovell, Bill, you can let everybody see that he's already outdistancing us in the beard race. Jim has got quite a beard going already. Happy birthday, Mother. Okay, now we're coming up on the view. We really want you to see that's the view of the Earth. And if you'll break for just a minute, Bill's going to put on the large lens, so we'll be right back with you. Houston, we're now showing you a view of the Earth through the telephoto lens.
You don't have a lens cover on there, do you?
No, we checked that, as a matter of fact.
There's a picture.
Didn't work all that well at first, but eventually people on the ground were able to see something that resembled an illuminated sphere called the Earth, and it wasn't high definition by any means.
And just hold her steady. It's really looking good.
We've been spending all these revolutions looking at the moon. Then as we come around this non-inviting place, we look up and there's the Earth. It's 240,000 miles away. It was small enough you could cover it with your thumbnail. And everything we held dear, our families, our country, everything we held dear was back on that blue planet. That was a sense of how in the world could this little ball, exist in this vast universe of nothing.
Wow, that's pretty. Hand me a roll of color quick.
Oh man, that's great. Where is it?
Quick.
We were all awestruck by the difference, the beauty of the Earth and its color against the blackness of space.
Oh, that's a beautiful shot.
Now, the question that we always receive, what was the most indelible view? What do you bring back? What do you remember after this flight? And I must confess that all of us, when we saw the Earth rising over the lunar landscape, said this was it. So the one overwhelming emotion that we carried with us is the fact that we really do all exist on one small globe. And when you get out 240,000 miles, it really isn't a very large Earth. Being unlikely poets, or not being poets at all, we have to turn to a very distinguished poet, and if I may, I'd like to read to you an excerpt from Archibald MacLeish, because I think it captures the feelings that we all had in lunar orbit. To see the Earth as it truly is, small and blue and beautiful in that eternal silence where it floats, is to see ourselves as riders on the Earth together, brothers on that bright loveliness in the eternal cold, brothers who know now that they are truly brothers.
All this makes me think of the beautiful poetry of the Scriptures. Psalm 8 in particular is the prayer of someone who is looking up. When I consider the heavens and the span of them, the psalmist prays, it makes me wonder, what is humankind that God is mindful of us? This expresses exactly what I believe is the eternal significance of that unexpected star over Bethlehem. Let us be certain this Christmas time to look up and consider our place in God's creation. Do not miss how significant it is that the sovereign God of the heavens is mindful of you. The overview effect, which I mentioned, is a real thing, and I read recently that social scientists place so much stock in the positive influence which the view of Earth had on the astronauts that they want to reproduce it in us. Scientists at the University of Missouri, no less, right here in the Show Me State, have been recruiting volunteers to float in a tank full of Epsom salts wearing a waterproof virtual reality headset in order to give the participant the feeling of being in outer space and viewing the Earth from the same perspective that the astronauts did. Psychologists involved in conducting the study say that there's a lot of division and polarization and disconnection between people these days. What they're hoping to see is whether we can recreate the overview effect on Earth. The volunteers in the experiment will complete a series of questionnaires to assess whether they had any mystical experience, felt more connected to others, or had what psychologists call an emotional breakthrough moment. Those who are conducting the study say that they're motivated because humans are causing potentially irreversible impact upon the Earth. The hope is that people will wake up to see that there are more things that we can do to help save the planet, protect the environment, and to live more in harmony with one another. Look to the heavens for yourself these days and see that we are all part of something much bigger than ourselves. But this, however, is not the final word about the marvelous, unexpected star of Bethlehem. What is even more significant is that God, who created the heavens, has come down to dwell among us. In Exodus chapter 3, when God calls Moses from the burning bush, God tells him to go to the Israelites and let them know God has seen their affliction, God has heard their cries, and God has come down to deliver them. The great good news of Christmas is that that bright star burning over the manger is there to announce that God has come down to dwell among us. If you've been paying attention, you know how much I love the way that Eugene Peterson has translated the first chapter of the Gospel of John. He says, God has moved into our neighborhood and dwells among us. In his book, The Christmas We Didn't Expect, David Mathis puts it like this: Christmas is the day heaven kissed earth. The eternal Word, the golden Son of heaven, humbly and willingly took up our lowly humanity, without ceasing to be God, coming to earth as one of us. And it wasn't some kind of mere show. The great move was all about our rescue. It is history's climactic expression of love and favor. The deepest significance of heaven kissing earth in the incarnation isn't just that God came to save us, but that Jesus is who he is. The great treasure isn't what the Magi bring, but the one hidden in a manger. He is the pearl of great price, given without money and without cost. The surpassing value of Christmas isn't finally knowing ourselves saved, but knowing the Jesus who saves us. So Jesus is not just our substitute, but our eternal satisfaction. His resurrection is essential not only so that we can be joined to him for saving, but most importantly, so that we can enjoy him with unsurpassed delight forever. Heaven's kiss is the only one that will be eternally satisfying. The deepest meaning of Christmas is not just that Jesus was born and not that he died, but that he ever lives to be our eternal joy. Jesus is pleasures forevermore at God's right hand, and we were made for him, and he for us. I am praying that we may all grasp the significance of the unexpected Star of Bethlehem as a reminder this Christmas, in these tough times, that God has drawn near to us. And the logical next step is for us to draw near to God. Hebrews chapter 10, beginning at verse 19, says, Therefore, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain that is his body, and since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and full assurance of faith. Let us draw near with confidence then to the throne of grace, that we might receive mercy and may find grace to help in time of need. God is able to save those forever who draw near to God through Jesus, since he always lives to make intercession for us. And those who draw near to God must believe that there is an eternal reward for those who seek God. This drawing near is not a physical act. It's not building a Tower of Babel by our achievements to get to heaven. It's not necessarily going to a church building. It's an invisible act of the heart. You can do it while standing absolutely still, or while lying in a hospital bed, or even while sitting at your computer listening to a sermon. Drawing near is not moving from one place to another. It is a directing of the heart into the presence of God, who is as distant as the Holy of Holies in heaven, and yet just as near as the door of faith. This is the very heart of the entire New Testament gospel. Christ came into the world to make a way for us to come to God. 1 Peter chapter 3:18 says, "For Christ also died for sins once for all, the just for the unjust, in order that he might bring us to God." Ephesians 2 verse 18, "Through Christ we have our access in one Spirit to God." Romans 5:11, "We exult in God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have now received the reconciliation." This is the center of the gospel. This is what the Garden of Gethsemane and Good Friday and Easter and Christmas are all about, that God has done astonishingly and costly things to draw near to us. God has sent God's Son to suffer and to die so that through him we might draw near. It's all so that we might draw near, and all of this is for our joy and for God's glory. And that would be all except for one more thing. My focus upon the stars in the sky led my memory to recall all of the advertising from a long, long time ago about buying a star and naming a star in honor of yourself or someone you love. Do you remember this? It must have been good advertising because it's filled my head anyway, even though I haven't heard a commercial for a while. I Googled the National Star Registry, which means now that they'll be in my inbox in my email forever. And you, of course, can still do the same thing if you want to name a star. There's nothing official about this, but it's a whimsical kind of a fun idea. On the website about buying a star, it says it truly is the gift for someone who has it all. Let's allow the Star of Bethlehem to remind us that we've all been given just such a gift this year. The God of the heavens is shining brightly into our lives. Looking up will lead our spirits to rise above our current despair. But even more than this same God of the heavens is not a distant God. The Star of Bethlehem reminds us that God has drawn near to us. In the baby Jesus, God has become one of us. Since God has drawn so near to us, then let us draw near to God and enjoy the unexpected peace, the unexpected love, the unexpected joy which may be ours even this Christmas time.